I don't think that, I get it though, I can understand why you would see God setting them up for failure, but I don't see it as a setup for failure as much as I do an opportunity to choose. Because anything short of the ability to choose would make them something other than human. Check it out.
What's up, everyone? This is Lisa Fields, the founder and president of the Jude 3 Project. And if you've been tuning into the Jude 3 Project, you know we just did a series, Why Don't I Go? And you know that in that series, questions were asked that we didn't answer because we wanted to listen. But now we're back with our Q&A edition. And I brought two friends along to help me answer some of those questions. Flame, AKA Marcus Gray, also Marcus Garvey. We have The Truth, aka Emmanuel Lambert. I don't have a civil rights hero for him. But we also have our panelists back, Jason, Crystal, and Vince. Fun story. Before I started my journey into apologetics, it was actually Flame's Rewind CD that got me to enroll in the New Testament course that started me on this journey to be here today. So kind of a full circle moment to have Flame here. And I was a huge fan of The Truth growing up in the faith. And so it's nice to have both of these gentlemen here to help me answer some of their questions, some of the questions from the panelists. And they have a podcast called
Complicated-ish.
So make sure you check that out as well. After you watch these episodes, make sure you subscribe to their podcast. But before we get started, I just want to hear from y'all. What did it mean for me to listen to y'all the first few episodes?
For me, it was like a first. Because like when you have certain type of questions that I was asking on that one and something I'm gonna ask today, it's like you can't ask that question. You are being influenced by the enemy for asking these types of questions, and it kind of gets shunned. So it was good to have you have a listening ear.
Awesome, that's encouraging to know.
I think it was really good because it was a safe space to have a conversation that people are typically sometimes afraid to have. Topics that are afraid to be talked about, you know, trying to be politically correct or to be, I don't know the word, but just to not ruffle any feathers. So it was just nice to have a space where you could have just an open conversation.
Honestly, I'm a piggyback off of that, but at the same time, I'm going to say that it was something. It set the precedent. Like it showed what could happen when questions are asked, and I think that's important. Not only for myself, but for viewers. I had several people DM me, you know, saying, great job, this was great. I learned a lot. Even questions that they had, you know, were answered. So it definitely was something great to see.
Awesome, that's encouraging to note that I don't have to give you the answers at every juncture. I could just listen to you. And I think that will help the church know that it creates a healthy space when you listen first. Even if you don't have the answers. And even if you have the answers, sometimes it's just good to let people get out their questions and their frustrations. So I think that's very instructive. But we're going to answer some of your questions today. That's why you're back. Jason, I'll let you go first. What's one of the most pressing questions you have for us?
Can I start with a question that I asked in the last one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because the space there wasn't really about getting answers, it was just about getting it out. So a question that I asked in the last one that I would want to get answered today is the Garden of Eden story, where it kind of felt like a setup for failure, where you have, you know, Adam doing what he's asked to do, and then Eve comes in, but then you have an influencer to do the very thing that you're not supposed to do. And they don't have any experience in life. They're the first humans ever. You know, they're told you'll surely die if you do this. They ain't never died or seen nobody die before. So with the lack of experience, you bring someone to deceive them that has thousands of years of experience as a higher being. It's like, how were they supposed to pass that test? Or were they supposed to fail for this grand plan in the end. So if that makes any sense.
That's a very good question.
You want me to start? You want to fire?
You can spark it, yeah. That's a great question. I love that.
Great question, bro. Well, I think I would start with, I'm not sure that God sent the serpent to deceive them. Based on the narrative as we understand it, is that Jesus said that he saw Satan, who was previously Lucifer, fall from heaven. And I think Revelation gives us a context for how Satan ended up being exiled to begin with, right? You don't get the sense when you read that narrative like this, where there seemed to be a bit of a coup in the heavens. You don't get the sense that this was the design of God. You get the sense that this is actually all that is not what God intended. You see what I mean? So I think that's one thing that I would say, not to try to absolve God, because I think that sometimes we can run into a brick wall trying to rescue God, so to speak. You know, I don't think that's our job. It's not our responsibility. There are some things that we will not really understand about God that will baffle our minds probably all throughout eternity, right? Because he's just that vast, just that big. But I will say in this instance, just based on our understanding of what is clear to us in the scriptures, you don't get the sense that this was the design of God, that he sent the serpent to deceive them. That actually is something that happened as a consequence of his rebellion against God. And because remember, when God creates hell, he doesn't even create hell for people. The Bible says that he creates it for the devil and his angels, right? So Satan didn't want to go alone. He didn't want to go at it alone. He said, I'm bringing some of your people with me. And so I think that he acted on his own at that point, fully depraved will and evil plan, strategic plan, in order to pull, Adam and Eve with him. You understand? That makes sense? So I think that's one thing that I would say. I think another thing I would say is, I don't think that, I get it though, I can understand why you would see God setting them up for failure, but I don't see it as a setup for failure as much as I do an opportunity to choose. Because anything short of the ability to choose would make them something other than human, right? So imagine if we had it the other way, where God determines for them all that they will and will not do, all that they can and cannot do. Well, that would make them something other than human. Because part of what it means to be human is to have the ability to choose. And what I believe is that God gave us a will and has gone to great lengths to honor it. You see, in other words, that's from the moment in which Adam and Eve had the capabilities of choice to present day. God honors the will. In fact, I'm so convinced that God honors the will that I believe that he would rather us choose something that would harm us than berate our conscience and force us to do something that we didn't want to. Right?
That makes sense.
Yeah. Now, here's the downside of that. God so honors the will that he grants us the prerogative to choose, but not the privilege of determining the outcome. And therein lies the rub for us, because we want the best of both worlds. We want our cake and eat it too. We want to be able to choose what we want, when we want, how we want, and control the consequence. God says. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say that's a flaw of man.
You see what I'm? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that I don't think it was God setting Adam and Eve up to fail. I would see it as an opportunity for them to choose to be human, to engage and activate the will. And what other? And then I'm gonna give it to Flame after this. But what is the true test of genuine faithfulness? I mean, in any relationship, how do we truly test the genuineness, the depth of a person's commitment? The only way you really test the genuineness of a person's commitment is if you present them with options.
And they constantly choose you.
And they constantly choose you. Mm-hmm. You see, but independent of options, there's no way to truly test the genuineness of a person's commitment to anything. You follow me? And I think that that's what we get in the garden. What we get is really God granting them the opportunity to choose him. Yeah, so.
No, I love that. I mean, it's hard to add to it. Only thing it makes me also reflect on is the backdrop also is just this vast expression of love as well, right? So it seems to be something to, it's better to be created than not created. So the fact that they exist is an expression of God's love towards his creatures. And then they have this garden to explore, which is an expression of God's love. So it's so much good there. And he says, all of this is yours, right? Explore, enjoy, live life. This is the kingdom of God, right? So it's just this, this intimate connection that they have with their creator, unique to anything we even can experience on this side of things. So I think I just wanted to add that to the conversation, that it would be really more love in the scene than we give credit to when we just sort of see it at face value. But it's like, look what he did, though, you know. And then immediately after they sort of drop the ball, he runs in with the rescue plan to sustain them, to cover them with the tunic skins, to rescue, to show them even this picture here reflects what's to come later in Christ and his death and sacrifice. So it's so much love there, so much goodness there of his good plan, his good idea, that even when this deviation happens, he runs in to make things right yet again. You know what I'm saying? But I think Crystal even said this on the first segment, that some of these answers just may not be as satisfying because of that deep longing for connecting those dots.
there would be follow-up questions, but I think that rabbit hole will go so deep. At some point, you just gotta have faith. You just have the faith.
Yeah.
So.
And I think, too, speaking on the testament of God's love for us just as humanity, is just he created this environment, this beautiful earth for us, despite knowing what our decision was going to be, whether it was to follow him or not follow him. Like, he still gave us all of this. So, yeah. So I think just kind of holding on to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this has been a phenomenal session, and we'll be back with more question and answers in the next episode, so stay tuned. When you confess your faults one to another and pray for one another, healing comes. And that means that confession to people brings healing. Confession to God is where I get forgiveness of sin. Confession to people is where I get healing from the sins that have been done to me.